I had a question on that, because I thought that they had to either approve it or disapprove it. I didn't think that they could change it. And if in fact what you say is true, they're changing it because it's specifically stated, and it was argued at town meeting as to the appeal process. And it clearly was that the appeal process would be to the court. So the people, I believe the people passed it under those guidelines. So I think probably that somebody should notify the Attorney General that the intent of that article clearly was to go to the court with an appeal, not through the zoning board. Therefore, if he tries to, I feel if he tries to change it and give it back to us in a different form, he's changing the intent of it.
I'm not saying that they would be changing it. I'm saying is that if they recognized it as a zoning bylaw, then all the appeal process of zoning has to be taken into account.
Who is responding to the Attorney General's office on behalf of the town?
Town council,
Town council?
CPC.
CPC. Okay, because if you recall, the recommendation of this board at the time, was not to recommend it, what was being presented, because of all the arguments, pros and cons that were heard. But town meeting took action. As far as the rationale as to why it was presented in the form that it was presented, I would just be concerned that the appropriate response be exactly why it was done. And the reason that it was done was to bypass the local appeal process and go directly to the court. Mr. Vino.
Yes. I do remember the town meeting, this exact question came up, if this happened, what would happen? Because this was brought up. What would happen if this did happen? And it happened.
Right.
So I guess now...
You're not surprised?
No, not surprised. No. I guess, just in general conversation, in listening here, I heard the word intent of what was done. I don't really know if the Attorney General cares what the intent is, other than the wording that's in... I think they read it one word at a time, and what that says is what it says. What the intent is, I don't think they're interested in that. Maybe that's the problem.
I would just
they're not reading it the way our town meeting.
And I don't mean to be speaking for Mr. Rowe, but I would just assume if they're not going to approve it in the form as submitted, let it come back to town meeting. Let town meeting decide what they want to do, because that's what town meeting put forth for consideration. So I mean, and I wasn't aware that the AG's office would kind of play a little shell game with it and say, okay, here you can have it this way. It says up or down. I thought.
What's its recommendation?
Chris,
I'm not familiar with the exact bylaw you're talking about, but it is within the scope of an AG review to determine whether or not a bylaw is appropriately done as a general bylaw or a zoning bylaw. One of the reasons for that is there are specific procedural requirements that differ between the two. For example, a zoning bylaw has to have a public hearing for the specific bylaw before it's presented for town meeting. It also then requires a 2/3 town meeting vote. Now, if you get the right quantum of vote, you pass by unanimous, that won't be an issue. But arguably what may be an issue with respect to it is whether or not there was a public hearing on the bylaw beforehand. And it is not uncommon for the AG's office in reviewing bylaws, both zoning and general, to, when they make their recommendation on approval, say it will be approved subject to these changes. Essentially what it's saying is if you don't make these changes, then you don't have approval and it's not valid. That could occur in this instance where they determine that it is one that was more appropriately a zoning bylaw, and then would make the subsequent changes necessary to have it comply with the statutory requirements. But again, that would then be if you don't make the changes. If you say no, then essentially what happens is it acts as a de facto denial because it's not going to be approved in the appropriate form.
And is there a time frame associated with that once it comes back from the Attorney General's office that you're required to act at the next scheduled annual town meeting in order to do that, or can you just
well, essentially what will happen is
limbo?
if they make suggested changes, you pretty much have to go back, because you've already approved it in a certain format, you pretty much have to go back to town meeting. So it's whenever you take it back to town meeting to make those changes, to it. And then obviously, their subsequent review is almost de facto, because if you've made the changes that they've already reviewed, they're gonna approve it.
Right. Okay, so it sounds as though it's probably gonna end up back in our lap anyway. And again, depending what the planning commission wants to do, if they want to have an article on, that's fine. Town meeting still has to approve it. Okay. Mr. Rowe?
Yes, you mentioned that the CPC and the town council is responding. I'd like to also, because one of the things that I didn't like about the law was this affects the zoning board of appeals and affects the building inspector. I'd like to have them reply to it also.
I mean, if you deem it appropriate, by all means. But I don't know. Probably the appropriate board should weigh in, I suppose, those affected. But I think what's happening here is as Mr. Vino pointed out, the question was asked at town meeting, what if? The what if appears to be occurring, and if what we're hearing comes to fruition, where the Attorney General has suggested it's a zoning bylaw, then that kicks in the whole review process at the local level first before it goes to Superior Court, which was the crux of the matter, and we're basically back to square one where we were before anyway. Mr. Murphy.
Except we're airing our dirty laundry in the AG's office.
We knew that anyway.
Yeah.
That was going there anyway.
Yeah.
Just hope he's gonna launder it for us. We'll take care of it. Okay. All right,
That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
that's it. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of State Senator Bruce Tarr. Nice of you to stop by and come in and say hello. I hope you're bearing gifts and money. I know you're on vacation up there on the hill. What good news do you have to share with us?
Well, I think this falls in the category of no news is good news, Mr. Chairman. We have not, as you know, completed deliberations in the conference committee on the budget yet. I would expect we have several weeks to go, which means that at least no damage has been done. But I know that the town very much anticipates the results of things, particularly regarding such items as Chapter 70 and local aid, and we hope to have a resolution on those soon, although I cannot responsibly predict that will happen soon. But we continue to work on it. I was here tonight to conduct office hours, Mr. Chairman, and label people to come in and say hello. And I just wanted to come in and say hello to all of you as well.
That's great. In relation to the budget, I know it's a guess, but are we talking October, do you think?
I suspect sometime either in late September or early October, Mr. Chairman, but it is very much a guess at this point.
Okay.
There are several contentious issues. I'm sure you all have read about several of them, such as the clean elections law and some of the other funding items. So it could be a while yet.
And plus, you have a few of your colleagues who are running for Congress. You have about, 5 or 6 people running for hire in other offices that have to result in September and a few other things. So
Well,
and some other posturing going on, too.
the primary in the 9th Congressional District is certainly the most impending distraction that we have to deal with. But there certainly will be others as well.
As far as any other local legislation that's been filed on our behalf, we only have one bill pending.
We have. It's currently before the Senate Ways and Means Committee. Came to us from the House relative to the transfer of a parcel of land along Ipswich River Park. I'm told by the committee that it is somewhat of a perfunctory review because it does involve a transfer of a parcel which has some value. We would argue for purposes of passage that it is not substantial, but nonetheless it has to go through the Ways and Means Committee. I continue to be in contact with them to see if we can expedite that, and it does not necessarily require a vote, so we hope that we can move it through without having to have a formal vote.
Okay, so it is all, I know it's all set on the House side.
It is.
So push it through, see what you can do.
As soon as it moved, Representative Jones called me and put us on the alert, and we got it and have started to move it through the process. So hopefully it won't be too much longer. This is one we've tried in the past, and we definitely want to get it over the goal line this year because we are so close. So.
And is this the second year in its 2-year lifespan?
No, actually, next year I believe
Okay.
will be the second.
Not that we would, if it is the first year, I don't want to go to the second year.
No, we definitely would like to get it done this year, and I think we have a good possibility of that, I really do. So we'll continue to keep you posted on that. It may also be of interest to the committee to know that I did offer a change to the Chapter 70 funding formula in the Senate budget debate. For those of you that have spoken to me in the past, you know that I consider the current formula to be not very fair. to many communities, and North Reading is one of them. And I think we need to do something to change the formula. Unfortunately, that debate happened this year not through the committee process, but in the midst of the budget debate, and I don't think that was a very good way for it to happen. But nonetheless, I took some time and worked with a number of people to put together a fairer formula that would try to help communities, particularly this one, to have more minimum aid coming from the state, because I know that you've invested a lot in education and not gotten as much back as you should. But I'm sorry to report, Mr. Chairman, that we failed in that amendment, although we did get a lot of support. In fact, the Boston Herald editorialized in favor of the amendment. So we will continue to try to do that, and I know it's very much on the minds of people in the community, and it's on our mind as well. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see much relief out of the conference committee for this current fiscal year.
Again, you're acutely aware, representing 16, 17 communities here, that you changed the banner on the top of the local newspapers, and we're all pretty much the same boat. And we have very few places to look for assistance in the form of revenue, and we always constantly are looking towards the state, because again, those are the taxpayers' dollars too. The impact on our local property taxes, again, continues to be significant. The cost of doing business, paying our employees a fair wage, all the rest, costs are escalating like it just in your household. So, particularly in the area of education, I think the state has to come up with some more money in order to meet the obligations of everybody in the Commonwealth. And again, the formula is key and important to this community in particular, along with a lot of other ones. But we appreciate your efforts, and keep your nose to the grindstone, and don't take no for an answer.
Well, Mr. Chairman, as Winston Churchill said, politics is much better than war, because in war you can only die once.
Yeah, that's right.
And I look forward to coming back as many times as it takes to modify the formula, because I do know it's a major source of concern, particularly for North Reading, but throughout the remainder of our Senate district, because we have communities that are perceived inappropriately to have the ability to pay much more than they should be in terms of funding education, and we need to change that balance. It may be a long-term project. We tried once, we'll be trying again.
Particularly in the area of special education. I mean, that's been woefully inadequately funded by the state. They haven't met their obligations, and the mandates have been there, but the funding hasn't backed them up. And, we're really, like every other community, we're feeling the pinch. It's having an adverse effect across the board on all of the level of services that can be delivered through the property tax stuff. So, again, thank you for coming by. Nice to see you.
Thank you. It's good to see you all. See you again soon, and we'll continue to keep up the fight on the Hill, and hopefully next time we'll have some good news.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll hold you.
Good night.
All right. Good night, Bruce. All the new business. Mr. Rowe.
The only thing I have is new business. I went to a meeting with it might be old, of a regional meeting on the Disabilities Commission, and talking to a number of communities. We're way behind. We're not complying to laws, and right now we have planned an article for the upcoming town meeting to change the wording that we've had. I believe we accepted it in 1997. We want to change that to get more compliance with the state laws, and I have a lot of information on it, but I won't bore you with it tonight.
Okay, but this is in relation to ADA
Yes.
compliance.
Compliance, we have to have a program which we don't have. There's a number of things that we're way behind on.
And are we still looking for people on disability?
We're always looking for people, basically, that, in one form or another, that would get on the committee and work. Right now, we're starting to get a little more momentum on the committee, but they have been discouraged in the past because they haven't had much support, and we're at a position now where I feel anyways that we are not abiding by the law, and I think it's imperative that we do that. A lot of people, one of the reasons is, myself included, people are afraid of the American Disabilities Act on the basis of the fact that it's going to require them to do things that they don't feel they should have to do and they can't afford to do. part of the act is in the fact you cannot